Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I don't think I'm alone in saying that the past 3 months have been exhausting, that the slapstick insanity of the White House makes just staying informed a sort of stress test on our collective insanity. That being said, I don't want to focus on the administration as a whole, or the 13 billionaires filling his cabinet positions. With this video I want to focus on one particular, very fragile billionaire, a strange and petty little man who demonstrates the fact that all the money in the world can't make you into someone you're not. In spite of a lifetime of performance as a sort of guru of finance and technology, in the past few months Elon Musk has been able to demolish his former image as an iconoclast of innovation and forward thinking, taking much of the inner workings of federal governance along with him in his path of self-immolation. So I think it's important to make this clear from the outset. I can't think of anyone I know, myself included, that doesn't think that there's plenty of waste and graft in the federal government. Plenty of wasteful spending that could be eliminated without any negative effects. And if that was what Musk and Doge was doing, then the public would be applauding the actions of this unelected billionaire immigrant as he cut waste out of the federal government. But instead he's doing the same thing that he did at Twitter. The same thing that private equity firms do at companies they buy out. The same thing any employee who's been laid off when new management comes in can recognize from a mile away. Move fast, break stuff, and leave a skeleton of the former institution you took over behind to give the illusion of a leaner and more efficient version of what was there before. All the while, the essentials that made that former institution successful have been gutted, and it's only a matter of time before the cracks begin to show and that skeleton collapses into a broken facsimile of what it has replaced. The issue is bad enough when it comes to companies. New management comes in, takes things in a bad direction, and bankruptcy or insolvency follows. Suddenly a company that has thrived for decades no longer exists or only exists as a subsidiary of some other much larger institution. That's typical in business. The thing is that governments are not businesses, and in spite of the rhetoric of some, running a government like a business not only entirely misses the purpose of government, it leads to massive and dangerous consequences long term. So what's happened now that Elon has come in, moved fast, and broken a lot of stuff? Well, so far the outward implications have been fairly minimal. I mean, sure, tons of federal employees in numerous important positions are out of a job and genuinely important work that they were doing has ground to a halt. But most of those whom that work impacts are poor, in distant parts of the world, or both. So little of it is getting the attention of the American public as a whole, particularly when there's several massive and often ridiculous actions being taken by this administration on a daily basis. There is so much noise and pageantry and genuine incompetence on a daily basis that the real implications of this bureaucratic dismantling are lost in the static, for a while at least, until either time stresses understaffed and underfunded agencies to the breaking point, or something happens that causes the public to notice this critical work is no longer happening. Just to point at one example of this playing out long term, let's look at foreign aid and tuberculosis specifically. Because number one, it's interesting. Number two, its consequences are pretty clear-cut and obvious. And number three, because John Green told me everything is tuberculosis, and John Green is awesome, so why the hell not? Tuberculosis is still the leading cause of death amongst all diseases worldwide, only briefly overtaken by COVID-19 during the pandemic. It killed 1.25 million people worldwide in 2023 alone. Meanwhile, COVID has dropped to less than 3,000 deaths per month worldwide at this point, making it a far less deadly disease globally than it was at its peak and letting TB return to its place at the top of the mountain of human mortality. The thing about tuberculosis is that treating it takes 6 to 9 months of a daily antibiotics regimen. Missing doses for even a few days or weeks can completely eliminate any progress made in curing the person. Worse than that, if a person on the standard treatment regimen simply stops their treatment, like if the drugs they need are suddenly being withheld in the name of government efficiency, then not only do those people lose the progress that they've made, more often than not, even if they do start up again, the old treatment regimen no longer works. The infection is now resistant to those original drugs, and the new treatment regimen takes 12 to 18 months on a more expensive array of medications. Not only that, they are now vectors for a more dangerous, less treatable version of the disease. Already, the U.S. is seeing outbreaks of diseases that have largely been absent from the U.S. for decades. Now our obstinance in treating people abroad for deadly infections is making them more resilient to treatment and more dangerous. But as long as it stays in the poor, far-flung parts of the world, it's not a problem, or rather, it's not our problem. But that is the problem with this move fast and break stuff method and approach to improving efficiency in our federal government. It takes away small investments and efforts at preventing issues before they become a crisis and leaving them to fester, ignored, until they grow to crisis levels and arrive on our doorsteps. I use TB as an example of what happens when we suddenly stop putting minimal amounts of money and resources into a problem, that it will only lead to bigger, more expensive problems to solve further along the timeline. But I doubt that TB is going to be the next major crisis our country will face. The fact of the matter is, I don't know what crisis will rear its head and stress our public resources and institutions. I simply know that they do come. And sadly, when emergency management, public health, and epidemiology, foreign aid, education, occupational safety, and oversight on corporate misbehavior all fall under the same chainsaw. Of government efficiency, it's only a matter of time before the holes put into these institutions in the name of efficiency end up biting us in the ass. And as always, the consequences of this move fast and break stuff tactic will not be felt by Trump or Musk, other than more bruises on their incredibly fragile egos, or by any of the other billionaires in this current administration's cabinet. The people that will be hit first and hardest will be those without enough expendable income to weather the hardship of losing their home to an extreme weather event without FEMA, or oversight on the insurance company denying their homeowner's insurance claim. The people who rely on SNAP benefits after losing a job. People living paycheck to paycheck suddenly confronted with any number of unexpected hardships and suddenly looking for support from a government that has been skeletalized in the name of efficiency. Even if something big enough happened to make the government want to reverse course and try to rebuild some of the parts of what they've gutted, what takes months to dismantle can take years or even decades to rebuild. Specialized knowledge and skill sets are not easily replaced, and those who have been pushed out by this administration aren't going to be enthusiastic about coming back when the stability of their employment is incredibly fickle and based on the whims of two incredibly unstable individuals. It only takes so much fucking around as a nation before we end up finding out. There is so much more that could be talked about with regards to the direction that America is going and how much that's affecting global economic and military relationships, but it's so much to talk about and so fluid at present that I'd rather not touch on it, at least not in this video. So instead I'll end on a slight silver lining, one that connects to my last video on Luigi Mangione and the inevitable results in an oligarchy indifferent to public outrage. As I pointed out then, the public will only take so much cruelty from industries profiting off of human suffering before something as extreme as a public execution becomes palpable or even praised by a large portion of the American public. The current situation with Tesla shows that most industries aren't so immune to public outrage. Unlike United Healthcare, Tesla is a company whose stock price is easily affected by protests and boycotts. It's easy to boycott a car company. Boycotting an insurance company is an entirely different animal. And of course, the boycotts are not only happening in the US, but globally. The vandalism and destruction of cars and chargers is cathartic, unsurprising, and to an extent counterproductive. But the boycotts are another story. The Tesla stock price has already lost all the value that it gained at the end of 2024. Sales are down by 50% across Europe, and even in the US, it's down by 15%, and that's not even touching on the disaster of the Cybertruck. It's nice to see the actions of a terrible person have consequences. Unfortunately, this terrible person is also obscenely wealthy, and no matter how terrible he is, even if Tesla went bankrupt tomorrow, Elon Musk would be just fine. He would still be obscenely wealthy. He could lose 99.9% of his peak wealth, and he would still have more money than most people could spend in several lifetimes. He would have more money than the entire gross domestic product of a country like Sierra Leone. So instead, the people that would be most hurt at the end of this disaster, as Tesla collapses, will be the employees and investors in his company. When you're that rich, that detached from reality, and that arrogant, you can move fast, break stuff, ruin lives and livelihoods, even tank an economy or a federal government, and still come out with more personal wealth than the GDP of an entire nation. So sadly, when these people fuck around, it's all of us who get to find out. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want to hear more of my ramblings on a random basis, and share your own thoughts in the comments below. Other than that, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next one.